Hello everyone, this is part 7 of What If Naruto Awakened New Skills, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. After around 10 minutes, Hinata stopped crying and Naruto glanced at the clock on the bedside cabinet that sat in between the two beds. The time showed 7:55 a.m. Fortunately, they only needed to go downstairs, so they got up off the bed and picked up the backpacks. Hinata had used some wire and slung the scythe over her back. Naruto had also kept some weapons with him, namely the two wakizashis that he'd bought. Using some wire, he'd fastened them to his back with the carefully crafted hilts with their intricate dragon design face downwards and slightly to each side in an X shape. He had decided that if he liked them he would get a set custom made with foxes instead, as he had become quite fond of the idea of being regarded as the fox warrior. They walked to the door and opened it. Hinata walked out and Naruto turned around to make sure that they had collected everything before turning back round and following Hinata out the door, closing it behind himself. As they walked down the corridor to the stairs, Hinata slipped her hand into his and smiled to him. He happily accepted her hand in his own and returned the smile. A few minutes later they arrived in the restaurant and joined Tsunade, Jiraiya and Shizune at the table. The waiter came over and they ordered some breakfast. Then Jiraiya decided it was time to go over the plan. Now then, what we have decided to do is follow Tsunade at a safe distance and allow her to make contact with Orochimaru. She will then begin the fight and we will follow close behind until she can get them clear of the town. Once that's done, we'll join in the fight and put the rest of the plan into motion, Jiraiya explained. I've got a better idea. That is, if Granny here thinks she can get them out of the town in less than 10 minutes, said Naruto smiling. You bet your AI can, brat. I'll have them out of town in 5 flat, replied the Sannin, furious that he had called her that. She was still certain that he couldn't possibly have mastered that technique in the time he'd had to do so. Good, then I suggest we leave here around 5 minutes after Granny and follow them from there, said Naruto. And how exactly do you propose we follow when we don't even know where they've gone? Asked Jiraiya. Simple, replied Naruto smiling. I can follow them by scent and sound. My hearing and sense of smell are even better than Kibis, he finished. Everyone was stunned, they couldn't believe it. How? Asked Jiraiya. Naruto's face turned solemn. Something else from the QB. Whilst I was missing, it decided it wanted me to be as strong as possible. It awakened my Kekkei Genkai, it gave me the summoning contract for foxes, and it enhanced my sense of hearing and smell, he said with downcast eyes, half expecting them to hate him now. Then he felt Hinata's arm wrap around him. He wasn't so surprised at this. She already knew about the fox and still loved him. He should have known this wouldn't change anything with her. Jiraiya was the first to speak. Well, I guess that makes a lot of sense, particularly when you consider that in all likelihood when US does it, so even if it was trying to find a way to break out, it's going to need as much time as it can to do so, said Jiraiya. Naruto was shocked. His head shot up so fast that you would have thought he should be suffering whiplash. He looked at Jiraiya, then to Tsunade and finally to Shizune. All their face showed one thing, complete indifference to this new piece of information. Okay then, well, with that dilemma solved, I think that sounds like an excellent plan. Orochimaru will never know what hit him, and since your plan was so good, I'll let that little insult slide. You haven't won the bet yet, said Tsunade. Naruto just smiled. He knew she was going to be proved wrong soon enough. The four sat and small talked for around 20 minutes, then Tsunade got up and left, headed to meet Orochimaru. 5 minutes later she was followed by Jiraiya, Naruto, Shizune and Hinata, with Naruto leading the way. They reached a wall and found it had a rather large section missing, as did the building behind it. Jiraiya wasn't surprised and was the first to speak. Somehow I don't think we're going to need your sense of smell anymore, Naruto, he said. I've seen large beasts that did less damage, said Naruto, his eyes wide. They quickly took off at a run, following the trail of destruction out of the town. They found flattened houses, uprooted trees, craters the same size as boulders. I see Tsunade still has that insane strength of hers, said Jiraiya as they passed what could be mistaken as a small volcano. A hill had had the entire of the top removed and a crater 4 meters deep was in the center of it. I've never known it this powerful. Tough. He must have said something to really piss her off, said Shizune a little worried. She knew that Tsunde's strength came from her chakra control and being able to unleash it at the point of impact, but Tsunde, despite her appearance, was getting old, and whilst she wasn't far past her prime, her chakra reserves were still lower than they once had been from both age and lack of use. If he's anything like he was in our days under Sarutobi-sensei, he doesn't insult often, but when he does it's far worse than any you'd normally hear. He knows enough of Tsunde's background to reopen some really old wounds and pour a lot of salt in them. I'm different because I never really did have anything to hide and didn't care much for what they said about it, explained Jiraiya. Shizune got very worried hearing this. She had seen Tsunde mildly lose her temper a couple of times, but if what Jiraiya said was true, and it looked like it was, then Tsunde was really going to go nuts at them, and if these were any indication, either she wasn't thinking clearly enough to plan the hit or her opponents were fast enough to evade even her quickest strikes, which would only serve to make her worse, even if she was only as bad as she'd seen her before. Then Naruto spoke. I can hear fighting of some form in the distance, or if these constant oversized potholes are any indication, Bar-chan twatting the floor every 30 seconds, he said. This caused them to hasten their pace. Further on ahead, Tsunde was furious. Orochimaru had said that all Hokages that had been and would ever be were nothing more than worthless trash. She couldn't care less really about him insulting the third or fourth, but to insult her grandfather and granduncle was taking it too far. She had chased after them for the last 10 minutes. Orochimaru and his accomplice, the man stood around the same height as the snake Sannin, but his build was a bit slighter. He wasn't wearing a shirt, and on the center of his C was a curse seal, 3 lines that curved clockwise. His hair was the same length as his master's but silver instead of black. Orochimaru had said his name was Kimimaro. What's the matter, Tsunde? Slowing down in your old age? Taunted the snake Sannin whilst laughing. This sent Tsunde off on another barrage of attacks, but still failing to hit either target. They were catching up quickly and could see figures moving in the distance. Again the group hastened their pace, but Jiraiya noticed something that worried him. They weren't moving away anymore. Whilst they were still moving, they seemed to be moving around in a single area. Something's not right. They aren't moving further away, they're just moving around the same area now, he said to the rest of the group, and they again hastened their pace. Tsunde was too wound up to realize that they were only moving around the same. Orochimaru, however, had noticed the collection of figures that had been slowly gaining on them and chuckled to himself mentally. They would be in for far more trouble than they thought. He had expected that the third would suggest Tsunde as the next Hokage and would likely send Jiraiya to get her, probably with the damn Kyuubi brat in tow. He consoled himself that despite the boy's large chakra reserves he was still unable to effectively mold it and had no access to the Cubus to compensate, believing his disruptive seal was still in place. He had planned that she might turn against him and that she would have others following her to help, so he had 6 of his best outside the Sound 4 hide in the area they were in now. They were merely waiting for his signal to begin their attack. As the group got closer, they could see that Tsunde was running out of chakra quite fast. Her attacks were becoming less frequent and the booms from her impacts with the floor were the same as they had been, meaning they weren't as loud as they had been. The group again sped up, now knowing that Tsunde needed help and that they weren't going to have to travel any further than that point. Around a minute later they arrived. They landed next to Tsunde whilst Orochimaru and the guy with him jumped onto a large boulder nearby. Shizune quickly moved to Tsunde's side. Lady Tsunde, are you alright? She asked, concern apparent both in her voice and on her face. The Sannin slowly rose to her feet. I'm fine, just a little tired, replied the Sannin a little out of breath. Kimimaro, said Orochimaru. The man then did something that the group found to be quite disgusting. A bone slowly came out of his left shoulder and he reached up with his right hand and pulled it quickly out. It looked like a sword made entirely of bone. He then passed it to Orochimaru, who took it with his left hand, raised it above his head and swiftly brought it down so that it was parallel with the ground. As soon as he did this, 6 ninja with the image of a musical note on their forehead protectors jumped out of some nearby bushes and trees and landed in front of Orochimaru and Kimimaro facing the group of ninja. Once we've KU5 we'll go and destroy Konoha and I'll take Sasuke as my next body. K them, said Orochimaru, his voice monotone and emotionless. The Sound Ninja quickly moved forward to engaging Jiraiya in combat, whilst the rest took on Naruto, Hinata, Shizune and Tsunde one-on-one. Jiraiya was holding his own against the 2 ninja but only just. Tsunde, Hinata and Shizune seemed to be struggling but Naruto seemed to have a slight upper hand. The Sound Ninja seemed to relay on powerful taijutsu strikes, Before he would have easily outmatched Naruto, but now Naruto was using a combination of ninjutsu and a higher speed, leaving his opponent quite vulnerable as he couldn't keep up with him. It took Naruto a matter of minutes to tire his opponent out and open him up. He then quickly finished him off, throwing a shuriken straight into his T, and immediately felt sick at having just made his first K, but that quickly changed as he looked over at Hinata to see her be badly in the side with a kunai by her opponent. As he saw her be attacked, something came over him. Power beyond anything he could ever imagine flooded his system. A primal rage encased him. He blasted forward without a thought. In a split second he had covered the 200 meters distance between himself and the sound ninja. As soon as he arrived, a Rasengan the same size as his head formed in his right hand and he thrust it into the sound ninja's side. The man was annihilated, his body shredded. All that remained was bits, nothing to ever signal what had once been. But he didn't finish there. He remembered what they planned to do to Konoha and the people there that were most important to him. Iruka, the closest thing he had to a father, the old Hokage, the nearest thing to a grandfather, Sasuke, Sakura, Kakashi and Konohamaru, the nearest people to siblings he'd ever had, Ayami and Tuki. He considered them his cousin and his uncle. He would never let them be harmed when he could do something about it. He would destroy anyone and anything that threatened them, be they man, animal, demon, nation or nature. He would protect them. Blue chakra swirled around his body. There was no red mixed with it. It was pure blue chakra. The force threw his shirt off his body. Again he charged at a sound ninja. Again he covered the distance in an instant, and again he left nothing to identify what it was. Then again with another sound ninja, and again till the only ones left were the Bone Freak and the Snake Sannin, and he would leave even less of them. He would remove any trace they had been there. Again the chakra swirled around him, only this time something completely different happened. He started flashing through hand seals so fast that not one of the three Sannin or any of the three others witnessing it could keep up. He finally stopped and shouted, "Hell's Infernal Rekoning, Demon Destruction Jutsu," as he was engulfed in fire, and then the fire blasted out, headed directly for the Snake Sannin and his remaining accomplice. They turned and ran, but they couldn't outrun the fire. It caught up to them quickly and engulfed them. The fire burned white, as hot as a sun, then it left Naruto's body and swiftly flowed to the two spots where Orochimaru and Kimimaro had been, flared for a moment and then exploded, leaving nothing but a 3 meters deep crater and scorched grass for 20 meters around the edges of the crater where each had been. Then he moved to Hinata's side with the same blinding speed that he had used before. He looked at her wound and knew she needed help fast. "Tsunade, Shizune, please quickly, Hinata needs help," he called out. Tsunade, Jiraiya and Shizune had all been put into a daze by what happened, but on hearing Naruto's cry that Hinata needed help, they quickly snapped out of it and ran to her aid. Tsunade quickly inspected the wound and immediately she and Shizune got to work healing. Hinata had been losing B at a swift but steady rate, so they quickly stopped any more B loss, and then with Shizune stopping her from losing any more B, Tsunade worked on closing the wound itself and healing the damage. For 5 minutes Tsunade worked whilst Shizune kept her from losing any more B, but to Naruto it seemed like an eternity as he watched with bated breath, waiting to find out if the girl he loved was going to make it. Finally Tsunade and Shizune stopped and relaxed. Tsunade was almost completely exhausted, having even used the chakra stored in the purple diamond on her forehead to heal the wound. Shizune was all but the same, with only a small amount more chakra left than Tsunade. "Is she going to be all right?" asked Naruto worriedly. "Yes, she's going to be just fine," said Tsunade. Naruto was visibly relieved at hearing this. He moved beside her and wrapped her in a hug, then placed her resting on his lap and stroked her hair, waiting for her to wake up. Jiraiya's mind was racing. How had Naruto done that? The only conceivable way was if he had been using the Cubus chakra, but the amount it would have drawn would have caused him to be cloaked in the red chakra of the demon. Yes, the chakra had been visible, and that was what really made it strange. It was all blue, the color of Naruto's own chakra. He knew he'd come across the reason before somewhere, he just had to remember where. As he was thinking, he noticed Hinata come around. Naruto's face lit up when he saw her waking up. "Are you all right, Hinata?" he asked, concern evident in his voice. Why yes, why? She asked wearily, not quite sure what had happened. She remembered being by the sound ninja and falling down and then seeing a flash of blue before she fell unconscious. You had me so worried. You got S by a sound ninja, and if Tsunade and Shizune hadn't have healed you when they did, you would have S from B lost, said Naruto, hugging her again with tears streaming down his cheeks. At that point it was very apparent to all that he really loved her. It was then that the information struck Jiraiya that he'd been trying to remember, but Tsunade asked the question before he could start explaining. What did you do, Naruto? I've never seen such raw power, she asked. Why, what happened? Asked Hinata, both worried and confused. Naruto had just taken out his own opponent when you got hit. He watched the ninja SU and seemed to totally lose it. How on earth he did it I don't know, but in a split second he was in between you on the floor and the sound ninja getting ready to KO you. He created the biggest Rasengan I've ever seen and completely annihilated the ninja. Then did the same with all except Orochimaru and the freak that was with him. When they were the only ones left, he used a technique I've never even heard of with a speed I didn't even know was possible and left absolutely nothing of them, she explained. Hinata by this point had sat up, and Naruto, after remembering what he had done, got up, moved away and got reacquainted with his breakfast. As soon as finished he came back to the group. I really have no idea what I did or how I did it, he explained. I think I can, but I suggest you get comfortable because this could take a while to explain, said Jiraiya, sitting down. He then waited for the others to get comfortable before continuing. During my travels I came across a legend, told in most countries with slight variations in 3. It speaks of a time when there were 12 demon beasts, each with their own territory. Now in most countries the 3 extra beasts aren't even named. But in the 3 with variations to the tale, the only variation is that one of the otherwise unnamed demons is named in each county. Of what I can gather from the legends, these 3 demons were sealed within Jinchuriki just as the Kyuubi was sealed within Naruto, but where normally a Jinchuriki is outcast and no one wants anything to do with them, the legends speak of these Jinchuriki finding love, more specifically a husband or wife. They also say that each of these with the beast sealed within them watch as their love was put in mortal danger. He paused to give the information to sink in and then continued. In each case the power of their love for the other person caused the demon to merge with them. They kept the knowledge, chakra and skills of the demons, gaining immense power whilst the demon was destroyed. No longer able to regenerate, from what I can gather the more powerful tailed beasts are highly intelligent and experience a wide range of emotions but are unable to experience love, and as long as the host is in love with someone, when they need the power of the demon to protect the one they love, they subconsciously drain the demon of all its knowledge and chakra to ensure their success, and thus the demon ceases to exist, he finished. Everyone looked at him blankly, so he decided to see if he could prove the point. Naruto, build up your chakra. Now as you know, Tsunade, when a Jinchuriki builds up chakra, whether it's theirs or the demon's, the seal used to keep the demon in appears, but if the demon is not there for any reason the seal doesn't show, he said, to which Tsunade nodded her head in reply. Naruto then began building up chakra, and to Tsunade, Hinata and Shizune's surprise the seal did not appear even when he had built up enough chakra to create a Rasengan. I can't believe it, there's no seal, which means the Kyuubi is gone, said Tsunade, amazement apparent in her voice. Naruto, how many jutsu can you think of? Asked Jiraiya. Naruto looked thoughtful for a moment and then looked shocked. I don't know exactly, but I know I have a memory that says I know over 2,000 individual and unique jutsus and some 3,000 modified and subjutsuses, said Naruto, surprised. Jiraiya just smiled. Now pull out one of those chakra cards and channel some chakra into it. Previously you had a primary wind affinity with earth as a secondary, and water was a weak third. If my guess is right, I think you're going to be surprised, said Jiraiya. So Naruto pulled out a chakra card from the side pouch in his bag, which they'd sat down beside, and channeled some chakra into it. What happened surprised them all. Before the card had split into 2 parts, one large and one small, the split signaling a wind affinity. The larger section had turned to dust whilst the smaller had gotten damp, but something different happened this time. The card once again split, but this time into 4 equal pieces. The individual pieces then reacted simultaneously as one turned to dust, one got wet, the third burned, and the last crinkled and bubbled. Hinata, Shizune and Tsunade lost control of the muscles of their lower jaws and they promptly hit the floor. Jiraiya, however, just sat cross-legged with his arms folded and a smile on his face. Just as I thought, the Kyuubi had a primary fire affinity with secondary enlightening and a third weak water. The fire couldn't go over your own wind affinity, so it lessened to the same strength as the lightning. The combination of yours and its increased your water affinity to the same level as the other three, so basically you have a primary wind element with a secondary affinity of everything else, so you'll have the easiest time with wind jutsu. Probably not even needing hand signs and find it almost as easy with everything else, though you'll probably still need to use hand signs for the higher level jutsu in the other four elements, and I have a feeling, with practice, you could even use the first wood techniques he explained. So what you're saying is that that bastard of a fox is gone for good? Asked Naruto. Jiraiya nodded. Naruto quickly stood up and performed a series of hand signs and his hand on the floor and said, summoning jutsu. A puff of white smoke appeared, and as it cleared, the small white fox once again appeared. Naruto, Hinata, is this for the plan? Asked the little fox happily. No, Byako, I'm afraid things didn't go according to plan. The QB is no more, said Naruto to the small fox. The fox looked at him curiously. Oh well, not a lot that can be done. The contract for foxes still stands, or I wouldn't be here, and as long as you treat us well it will remain. I shall inform the others of what's happened. We all knew it was possible one day. You were his sixth Jinchuriki after all, said the little fox. Okay, well, I may resummon you in a bit. I think we may need someone with a slightly happier disposition for at least the first part of the trip back, said Naruto to the fox before it disappeared with a puff of smoke. But the other four hadn't been paying attention. They had noticed the scars that littered his back and arms. They hadn't been able to see them before because he always kept himself covered with long sleeve tops. Naruto, what happened to your back? Asked Tsunade. Naruto's head dropped. Every year on my birthday I wanted to celebrate the defeat of the QB with the rest of the village, and every year on my birthday I was attacked. People tried to kill me. I've been burned, had my joints dislocated. Punched, kicked, jumped on. If you really counted, I've nearly 40 times. I've been attacked on over 300 separate occasions. I'm in my third apartment now. The first one every other tenant moved out of. They barricaded me in my apartment and set fire to the whole building. The second they broke in weekly, almost daily. They would destroy or steal everything. There's only one shop that will sell me clothes I can afford, and they charge me 100,000 ryo for just one orange jumpsuit. The only shop that will sell me food charges me 120 ryo for one cup of instant ramen. The only place that will sell me things at a normal price is Ichiraki's ramen stand. His ramen is the best, but few people will go there because he serves me, he said, tears falling from his cheeks to the floor. Hinata was shocked again. She couldn't even speak. Tsunade and Shizune had tears welling, and Jiraiya's mouth hung open. For 12 years I never knew why. A lot of the time I was lucky. A good number of Anbu and Jonin don't see me as the QB, and whenever they could they protected me. As far as I know, Abiki and Anko, the proctors for the first and second Chunin exams, have taken something of a liking to me, and I know that more than one person has had a long one-to-one session with them because of what they did. Then when it came time for us to become genin, I failed the exam. I was devastated. Then Mizuki came to me and said that there was a way I could still pass. I had to recover a scroll from the Hokage's office and learn a technique from it. He tricked me. Iruka found me, and as I finished telling Iruka what had happened, Mizuki arrived. He broke the Hokage's law and told me about the QB sealed within. I took him down because he tried to kill Iruka, and Iruka was the first person outside the old man and those at the ramen stand to acknowledge me as a person, and because I mastered the shadow clone jutsu I was promoted to genin. It's one of the most advanced clone techniques ever created, he continued, the tears flowing heavily now. He was shaking as he continued. I wasn't helped like the rest of the kids at the academy. I've since learned that I never had a chance at doing a decent henge or illusion clone. I wasn't taught how to do them right. Every person in the class was shown individually how to hold a kunai and a shuriken. Again, I never had a chance at hitting a target. I wasn't holding them properly. Fortunately for me, after Iruka gave me his head protector, he asked me to show him how I held a kunai and a shuriken. He saw I was holding them wrong and showed me how to hold them right. I had asked for help for the written test to be able to do them, but no one ever would. By the time we got to be in Iruka's class, one had given up on the written portion and just hoped to make things up on the practical exams, but that doesn't matter now. The demon is gone, so maybe people will leave me alone. As he finished saying this, he fell to his knees and cried heavily. Hinata could hardly believe he'd been through so much, and despite it all he always had a smile and a very positive outlook. She moved behind him and wrapped him in a hug. She knew one way or another that things would be different. Whether because of the Kyuubi being no more or because of her clan's protection, things would be different for him. Tsunade and Shizune were both crying heavily. They could hardly believe that even after everything they did to him, his outlook was so positive and he had such determination to become the Hokage of the people that would have him. Jiraiya just sat there mouth agape. His mind had stopped functioning properly. He heard everything but hadn't been able to work it out. How was it possible that the boy was still sane? Around 5 minutes later, Naruto stopped crying and had composed himself enough to collect his shirt and swords and put them back on. He then walked back to the group and picked up his bag. He then went over to Hinata and, wrapping his arm round her waist, gave her a K on the cheek. It was then that Hinata finally noticed and said something. "Naruto, your whisker marks, they're gone," she said quietly, causing Jiraiya, Tsunade and Shizune to look at him, and what they saw shocked them more than what they had heard before. If they didn't know better, they would have sworn that the boy standing in front of them was not Naruto Uzumaki but in fact the fourth Hokage. Tsunade stood up and walked over to Naruto. She looked at him and smiled. Now it made sense to her why she had been willing to make that bet with him and why he looked so familiar even though she didn't know his name. "You've earned this, Naruto, in more ways than one. I know you'll make a great Hokage when I'm done," she said, taking off her necklace and placing around his neck. Naruto just smiled weakly. They walked back to the hotel. Jiraiya and Tsunade had talked and decided that they would spend another night there. Jiraiya was more or less okay. Naruto was physically never better but mentally exhausted. Hinata was a little broken mentally after hearing Naruto's story and physically exhausted, and Tsunade and Shizune were both mentally and physically exhausted. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.